Russell Westbrook's old general manager in Washington says he absolutely didn't want to go to the Clippers. Is that disrespectful? In honor of Manu returning to the Spurs, we'll count down his top 5 plays of his career. And Malika Andrews sits down with James Harden to talk about his expectations for the upcoming season. The Jump starts right now. Hey, what's up? Welcome to The Jump. I'm George Sedano, joined by NBA champion Kendrick Perkins and senior writer for The Undefeated Mark Spears. Let's start with the Warriors and Steve Kerr talking about Klay Thompson's return to practice. Let's take a listen.
Klay looked great. I mean, shooting the lights out, and his team won the daily shooting competition, and he was smiling, laughing, and joking around. It was really fun to see the old Klay back.
So, Perk, what are realistic expectations for Klay this coming season?
Well, I mean, look, George, the one thing that we shouldn't doubt, right, is doctors and technology. And we witnessed Kevin Durant and John Wall last year come back off of torn Achilles, the same injury as Klay Thompson. And one thing Klay Thompson didn't injure is his shooting hand, okay? He's still going. Everything else is going to fall in place. And when he gets back on the court, with that culture of the culture of the Golden State Warriors, he's going to be out there. He's going to be at least 80%. 80% Klay Thompson is still averaging 18 to 20 points in the league. So I expect Klay to come back as the normal Klay Thompson.
Yeah, I think, Perk, and I'm going to bring you to one of your old teammates, Russell Westbrook. I don't think anybody comes back better from injuries than him. When he comes back, he's at 110%, like he never had an injury in the first place. And I expect Klay to be the same way. But what's new here is he's not coming back from just one injury. He's coming back from 2. Remember, he had the knee injury, a major knee injury, and he hasn't played this decade. His body has had a lot of time to rest. Mentally, I think he'll be fine. But we're in a new category. This isn't Kobe, this isn't Durant, this isn't John Wall. This is 2 injuries. So obviously we expect him to be at a minutes restriction. And Klay said he thinks probably sometime in late November, December. But because of the 2 injuries, I think mentally he's fine, but I'm curious to see defensively, not how he is on offense, but more so on defense.
He's going to take time. There's no question. And they should take their time with him. There should be no rush here. Give him that minutes restriction, as you pointed out, Mark. But I do think eventually, if they build him up the right way, which, look, we know the Warriors are going to do the right thing here. I think Perk may be right. I think by the end of the season, which is when it matters, by the end of that regular season, as we're getting close to playoff time, if you can get a Klay Thompson that looks like Klay Thompson has in previous years, the Warriors are a dangerous team. Look, Mark. Perk, thank you guys. We're going to be back in just a moment with you guys, all right? So hang out. Don't go anywhere. I want to welcome in our insider, Tim Bontemps, by the way, who released a story on the enhanced protocols for unvaccinated players. And the Warriors obviously are in that category at the moment as well. So, Tim, what are some of the differences in the protocols between players who are vaccinated and players who aren't?
Well, George, for players who are vaccinated, they're going to be able to do basically normal things, right? They're going to have very few times they have to get tested. They're going to have very few restrictions on what they're able to do. But for unvaccinated players, they're going to have their lives be basically like they were at the start of last season. And you can see here on the screen some of the things that they're going to have to do. But really what the NBA is doing here is making life incredibly difficult on the players who are not fully vaccinated. They're going to have to go back to being away from their teammates, have to be restricted in what they do, both at home and on the road. They're not going to be able to leave their hotel room. They're not supposed to leave their house unless they are going to, get groceries or take their kids to school. I mean, basically, the league is saying if you're fully vaccinated, you're going to be able to have a somewhat normal life, like most of society has gotten back to. But if you're unvaccinated, you're going to have to be really restricted in what you do. And one other important thing is, last year, we saw a lot of guys be caught up in close contacts, right? We all remember when Kevin Durant got pulled out of the game against the Toronto Raptors on ESPN when there was some questions about his close contact with somebody in his circle. Well, this year, fully vaccinated people are going to be able to stay out of quarantine as long as they keep testing negative. But if you're unvaccinated and you're a close contact, you have to sit out for a week and miss at least 3 games. So this is something that not only is going to be restrictive on guys in terms of their movements, but it could cause guys to have to miss games as well.
Interesting. What else is there left to be resolved for unvaccinated players at the moment?
Well, one of the things that was left to be unresolved, George, was what got released earlier today by the NBA, which was the announcement that in New York City and San Francisco, the two cities where they passed executive orders about, people having to be vaccinated to be able to go into arenas like Barclays Center and Chase Center, the NBA has said that anyone who misses games because of those vaccine mandates will not be paid for those games. And obviously, we have two high-profile situations with that involving Andrew Wiggins with the Golden State Warriors and Kyrie Irving with the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the situation in Golden State is a little different because the San Francisco law doesn't go into effect until next month, right before the start of the season, which is why Andrew Wiggins was at Media Day and he's been able to practice with his team right now. Kyrie Irving, on the other hand, was not at Media Day on Monday in Brooklyn because he wasn't allowed to be at Barclays Center, right? So he went out with the team to San Diego where they're practicing this week. But next week, the Nets come back home. They have preseason games there. And if Kyrie does not have a shot by then, he's not going to be able to participate either in practice or games. So we're already starting to see this stuff ramp up. And it's going to potentially cost these guys a significant amount of money. And it only raises the temperature on what is already a pretty complicated situation for the league, having pretty significant high-profile players be caught up in this situation.
Certainly something we'll keep a close eye on. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate you joining us, brother.
Of course, George.
You got it. Let's pivot to Russell Westbrook, who apparently wanted to play for the Lakers and only the Lakers when he was traded from the nation's capital. Wizards general manager Tommy Shepard shed some light on this earlier this week. Here's what he told NBC Sports. Quote, Russell actually never asked to move on. He just said, if I can get to the Lakers, that'd be something I'd love to do. If not, I'll be back here. I said, well, what about the Clippers? He said, hell no. So Russell was happy being here, and we were very grateful for him being here. So, Perk, what's your reaction to hearing that Russ didn't want to play for the Clippers with an emphatic hell no?
Well, I mean, I wonder at that time he was asked the question, was Patrick Beverley still on the team? Because I guarantee you that played a huge role in it. But, when you think about Russ, right, a guy that's born and raised from Los Angeles, California, if you know his background, you know his history, you know where he come from, for as we call him OG Westbrook, his dad, my guy, Mama Westbrook, my girl, they was raised up as Laker fans. So Russell Westbrook was always a Lakers fan. Growing up in the city, he always watched Kobe and Shaq. He was a little bit too young to really see Magic do his thing, like talking about it, but the Laker Nation ran through his bloodstreams. And as a guy, as a former player, you always want to go back home and play for a team that you rooted for. I was a guy that was a huge Hakeem Olajuwon fan, big Rockets fan when it was Clutch City. So I expected that out of Russell Westbrook. No, he didn't want to go to the crosstown rivals of the Clippers when he always grew up praising and being a fan of the Los Angeles Lakers.
Piggyback on what Perk said, Russ grew up down the street from the old Forum where Kobe started his career, where Shaq first went to the Lakers. And in that era, man, that's the ship be sinking Clippers, Donald Sterling's Clippers, Danny Manning's Clippers, a Clipper franchise that was viewed as the worst in sports. They were laughable not only in LA, but worldwide. So once you become part of that Lakers cult, the last thing you want to do is support anything Clippers. This is the Kadeem Hardison Clippers. They were at the, remember Perk, the sports arena where they had like rats running everywhere. They were just an embarrassment to the league. So to him, that's probably what the Clippers are probably always going to be to him. Though that LA sports arena Clippers. And so I'm not surprised. He probably still sees them the way that he saw them as a kid.
Well, and Perk made a great point about Kobe Bryant earlier. I remember unfortunately the first game back after Kobe's passing here in LA. Portland was playing the Lakers. I was in Houston, and I got a chance to talk to Russ after the game. He was the player of the game when Houston won, and I asked him, and he just glowed about his relationship with Kobe and what it meant to him, and growing up in that city, watching him, to Perk's point earlier. And he talked about this when he first signed with the Lakers in his press conference, Mark, to your point, where he remembers being 9 years old and, skipping school to go watch parades with Shaq and Kobe and Phil and that particular group. So I could totally understand why it was Lakers or bust for him. So coming up next, speaking of the Lakers, their rival.
Got a lot of going prove. physically, you're good, but mentally, getting past the way it ended, playing for your teammates on one leg, how do you move past that and have that push you towards your champion pursuits this season?
Just trying to get my mind and my body right. That's all I was focused on this summer, and come back even better, bigger, and stronger, and quicker. I feel better than I probably ever felt before.
You feel better than you've ever felt before?
Yeah, just more confident, knowing that we have a legit chance to be the last team standing. You had to have that confidence.
I'm not really sure what the point is if you're going to quibble about this stuff. These are 3 stars. You pay them, you move on, you make it work.
You seem focused, and I know you mentioned to the general media that you need to just be in the right mindset to sign a contract extension. What is that right mindset?
I think the course of my career, I've never been a free agent before, so I've always just been loyal and just signing contract extension and just being there. I just want to take my time with it. It's gonna be very, very difficult to leave here, or even to leave Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. But I think this season I just want to focus on winning a championship, and everything else will work itself out.
Winning a championship, everything tends to work itself out.
Facts.
The chemistry, as soon as we can build that, as soon as we can be on the court together, it's going to be scary hours.
So if last year was scary hours, what's this year?
It's the same mindset. You just get a whole year of it. Kevin was out, I was out, Kyrie was out. A lot of changes throughout the course of the year in the lineup. Now you get a full roster and a full year of scary hours. Yeah.
And Malika will be hosting the new daily basketball show here on ESPN NBA Today, starting Monday, October 18th on ESPN2. You can check it out weekdays at 3 Eastern, noon Pacific, right here from our LA studios. Now let's head out to Nets camp out in San Diego, where Om Young-Masuk is live. So, James Harden said at Media Day that he wants to finish his career with the Nets. What are you hearing about his contract extension?
Look, the Nets are optimistic that this is going to be done, but it has to be done prior to the regular season, the start of the season. James Harden is saying right now he's just focused on winning a championship. As he said to Malika, he's never been in this position where he can really kind of think about being a free agent. He's always kind of been loyal to his team. But he also said it's not about the money. For him, it's really about being on a good team, being with guys that he likes, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. He talked about how hard it is going to be to leave them. Steve Nash was even asked about this yesterday, and he said he's pretty optimistic that Kyrie Irving and James Harden are going to be with the Nets long term.
Interesting. Now, Kyrie Irving is at camp and practicing. How has he been received?
He's been received fine. I mean, look, his whole thing is he doesn't want to be a distraction. And so far, he hasn't been. But look, there isn't a ton of media here from New York. This is really like a couple writers from New York, some local writers from San Diego. So it's not like he has this media crush on him watching his every move. We were allowed in a practice at the end of practice, so we really only got to see Kyrie kind of shoot around and then walk off the court. The big three is slated to talk later this week, possibly tomorrow. And so I think that's when Kyrie probably will ask more questions about all the protocols in place for those who are not vaccinated.
Finally, today is Kevin Durant's 33rd birthday. I know when he was with Team USA, they joked that it was his birthday, and it wasn't his birthday. Are the Nets planning anything for him? An outing out at the Gaslamp District? What's going on today?
So far, I'm told nothing yet in practice. They are in practice right now as we speak, right behind me. But I'm sure the Nets have something planned in store for him. Maybe we'll get a glimpse of it at the end of practice. Look, it is a beautiful day in San Diego, George. I'm sure Kevin Durant and the Nets are going to find a way to celebrate his 33rd birthday somewhere here in San Diego.
Well, I can suggest many places. La Jolla, Coronado, wherever they'd like to go. There's plenty of great places in San Diego. Om, thank you for joining us, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We now welcome back our NBA insider, Brian Windhorst. Fellas, let's stick with the Nets, and obviously Perk's here as well. KD has 2 titles. Kyrie has 1 title. Harden says he isn't worried about the money, but he's looking for the Nets to be contenders for years to come. James Harden also said he's in no rush to sign a contract extension. So, Windy, how big a deal is this?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the biggest stories in the NBA no one's talking about. James Harden not extending his contract before training camp, which is what the Nets said they wanted to do. And I appreciate his willingness to discuss it. He answered a question from me about it at Nets Media Day, but I just can't take him necessarily at face value because I do believe it's about the money. And here's the reality. If he signs an extension now, he does indeed tie himself to the Nets for the next 4 years, and he can only guarantee himself somewhere in the neighborhood of $160 million. Great money. If he waits until next summer, becomes an unrestricted free agent, just kind of like what Kawhi Leonard did, he can sign for 5 years and $270 million. That's 160 versus 270. That's a massive difference, but it requires him to become an unrestricted free agent, which is uncomfortable for the Nets. I don't think it necessarily means he's going anywhere, but when he tells Malika, I've never been a free agent before, that sounds to me like he's going to intend to be a free agent. So it's not a red flag or red alarm, but it's something that we definitely have to monitor, and we can probably no longer say that Zach LaVine is going to be the number one free agent on the market. It might be James Harden.
And you know what, Wendy, I agree with you for the simple fact we all know that James Harden, he could talk about it's not about the money, but we all know it's about the money when it comes down to James. He loved the game of basketball, but he also loved his lettuce. And I don't see him leaving $110 million on the table if he could wait a couple more months or wait till this NBA season and get 110 extra million more dollars. But here's the thing, right? I also think that James Harden is also going to evaluate this Nets team, right? And I think the person that's going to get evaluated the most is not Kevin Durant, it's not Steve Nash, it's not Sean Marks, it's Kyrie Irving. And how they handle Kyrie Irving. We all know right now he's not vaccinated. We know what's going on and the rules about, for us them playing in New York, that he could possibly miss more than half of the season or half of the season due to him not being vaccinated. So, I think with James is, one, yes, he wants more money, but two, he's trying to fill out the situation. He want to see what direction they're going to go in and how they're going to handle Kyrie Irving and what Kyrie Irving is going to do at that.
That is a fascinating point, Perk. And look, last year was just weird. It was clunky for a lot of teams, but them specifically in a lot of ways. So I do think just to see what the fit looks like. And, Brian nailed it. If you've never been a free agent before, it's nice to be courted. I don't think there's any doubt. And I'm not even leaving, forget about 110 million. I'm not leaving 110 bucks on this table, let alone 110 million. So I ain't mad at anybody for leaving, making sure they try to get their money. All right, coming up.
Juggling all this.
It's exactly what you said. Before we were playing zone, zone defense. So it was me and Mariah, and we had Liam in the middle, and we were just, taking turns. But now it's man to man. It's tough. But I enjoy it. I love it.
Yo, man, I've been there. Okay. Perk, does Giannis have the right strategy with the second kid, the man-to-man defense?
Yeah, he do have the right strategy, but the problem is that he's not going to be able to play man-to-man that long because he's going to have to travel, so he's going to have to sign some people to some contracts, okay?
Do you think he can afford it, Perk? I'm not sure. Look, I've only got one kid, but my wife and I are constantly in the prevent defense.
Oh.
Always in the prevent.
Yeah.
The best we can do.
Yeah, well, prevent makes sense because there's disaster looming at any given moment when you have children. So that is absolutely the right way to handle this. Hey, look at that, Windhorst imparting the wisdom, Giannis. Take note, Greek freak. That's how this thing works. It ain't getting any easier.
Always in the prevent.
In their win and join Cheryl Swoops as the only players in WNBA history to record a playoff triple-double. Just an incredible performance. So shout out to Courtney. Welcome back to The Jump. I'm George Sedano with Kendrick Perkins and Brian Windhorst. With the season fast approaching, let's discuss some of the NBA win totals here. All estimates are courtesy of our friends at Caesars Sportsbook. We begin with Perks Celtics, who lost to the Nets in 5 games. In the first round last year, Jaylen Brown was injured. Their win total, though this particular season, is listed at 46.5. So, Perk, are you going to be a homer and go over, or are you going to be realistic and go under?
I'm going to be realistic and go over. 46 and a half, George, that's disrespectful. Look, we're talking about Jason Tatum, right? One of the most prolific scorers in the game today. Jaylen Brown, we saw what he did last year. He's only going to get better. And quietly has kept the Celtics flew under the radar this offseason. Getting Dennis Schroeder on the mid-level, acquiring Al Horford, re-signing Marcus Smart, getting in this counter along with getting Josh Richardson. I think, they have a great team. They've signed Robert Williams back. I think guys are going to know their roles. I love the coaching hire by them. Brad Stevens moving to the front office. The Celtics are going to win 50 games.
Yeah, I wonder what the front office actually thinks their over-under is. I don't know if we could get an honest answer from Brad Stevens, because the moves that they made this offseason, they were cutting salary. They used a first-round pick to move off of Kemba Walker. I realize they got Al Horford in that deal. They let Evan Fournier go and replaced him with Josh Richardson, who is, frankly, just, he gets paid less money. They were not making moves like they thought they had a championship contending team. Now, Perk is right. They have two guys who are all-star level players, and if they're healthy all year and a very motivated Dennis Schroeder, yeah, I could see them getting to 47 wins, but I don't consider them in the Eastern Conference one of the top 3 or 4 teams. They could prove me wrong on that. I would probably stay away from this wager, but if you press me on it, George, I guess I would go under, but I don't feel strongly about it.
I don't feel strongly about it either way either. I mean, Josh Richardson is a good complementary player. He can do some things on offense. He's certainly a very good defender. I like bringing back Al Horford because I just think from a leadership perspective, I think that plays well. And he played pretty well in his time in Oklahoma City, I thought, last season in a very, tenuous situation with a bunch of young players on that particular team. But I'm with you, B. If I'm going to go anywhere, I'm going to go slightly under. The Eastern Conference is for real, Perk. They're going to have a real game every single night. This is no longer the Eastern Conference.
So that goes to show me that y'all must have didn't watch a lot of the Celtics game, right? I didn't miss one. And the reason that they had to get rid of Evan Fournier, the reason that they had to get rid of Kemba Walker was because they were in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown way. They needed to get more role guys around them to let those young guys be the best version of themselves. When the Celtics played well is when Jason Tatum was out there getting triple doubles, not only being able to put the ball in the basket, but also make others around him better. Same with Jaylen Brown. See, both of these guys we already know could put up 25 points a night, but now they're graduating and taking that next step of making others around them better. So they needed to get Kemba out the way. They needed to get Evan Fournier out the way.
Well, we'll see where they get the rest of that 60 from after those guys score 25. I'm curious to see that. But let's move on to the Knicks, who exceeded expectations last season and landed in a top 4 seed in the East. This season, their win total is listed at 41.5. So Vegas not as high on the Knicks in another year with Tibbs. So Brian, are you going over or under on the Knicks?
Boy, they're begging the Knicks fans to take the over on this bet. You always got to be careful when Vegas looks like they're trying to force something. Yeah. I would say over for the sheer fact that I know they're going to play hard every single night. I sat with the Brooklyn Nets on Monday, and they openly admitted, look, we're not necessarily going to put an onus on the regular season. You could see the Nets maybe not winning that as many games as some of the other elite teams, but they're going to be there in the end if they're healthy. The Knicks, I know with Tom Thibodeau and this group, are going to have the hammer down every single night. You're not going to see them resting their lead players unless there's some sort of injury. So I think they upgraded their talent in the offseason. Fournier and Kemba are upgrades, and they're paying Kemba $10 million a year, not $30 million a year, and therefore the expectation level is different. And if he gets banged up at all, they have Derrick Rose sitting there behind him. I actually think they've got too many players. They're going to have difficulty coming up with a rotation. So I'm not saying that they're going to be a top 4 seed again, but I see them being a winning team, trying to win every night, and that would mean over 41.5.
Well, you know what? I hate to say it because, I love Tibbs and I love what they're doing over there with the Knicks as far as with the culture. But last year, they were the ones that were doing the hunting. This year, they're going to be hunting. And I'm not saying that because they won a championship or whatever the case may be, but they made a lot of noise and they put the league on notice. So now guys are actually going to be getting their rest and strapping their boots up because they know that they have to go to war and know that they have to compete with this team, which is going to make it a different story. We have to remember the Hawks are coming back. We have to remember the Chicago Bulls got better. We have to remember that even you're looking at a team like, the Celtics, the Philadelphia 76ers, it's so many teams in the Eastern Conference, the Miami Heat, that I'm looking at the New York Knicks, and I don't know if they necessarily have the star power as the other teams do.
So I think, Perk, you're onto something where they're not going to catch anybody by surprise this season. Everyone knows what they're getting. And look, I like their roster. I think McBride and Grimes, I saw them at Summer League. I thought they're going to be really good young players. I actually think the Knicks are like a year or two away from being back into that position they were this past season. I think they take a step back. And look, I'm not getting fooled by Vegas. I've learned this about gambling. If it looks too good to be true, it is. Brian kind of mentioned that earlier, and that's where I'm going. I'm going under on the Knicks at 41.5 because Vegas, you ain't fooling me. It ain't happening. All right, lastly, we have the Hawks, fresh off a surprise trip to the Eastern Conference Finals. Their win total is listed at 47.5, pardon me. So, Perk, over or under on the Hawks?
I'm going with the under. I got them right around 45, 44 wins. And the same reason for us with the New York Knicks. Will the Hawks be a playoff team? Yes, I believe they will get in the playoffs. But again, teams, they're not going to surprise anybody no more. People are they know about Ice Trae. People know what John Collins could do. Like, now the scouting report hits a little different. And I'm not saying that they're not going to be above 500. I just see them around 44, 45 wins, so I'm going with the under.
Yeah, I want to say over here because this is an incredibly deep team. They really go 10, 11 deep with high-quality players. They have stars. They're going to have Nate McMillan from day one. They're not going to have that midseason disruption. They also were bothered by injuries last year, including to Bogdan Bogdanovic. And so I want to say over. Part of me, I get a little skittish about it because the Eastern Conference is so deep. You could be a high-level Eastern Conference team and only win 47 games. You could be a 3 seed in the East and only win 47, or maybe a 4 seed 47 games. I'm gonna lean a little over just because I got a big belief in their young guys growing up, but this is another one that I don't think I'd put actual money on because there's too much uncertainty in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, listen, Brian, I think that when you look at it, you nailed it. The East is deep. The East is deep. There's no doubt about that. I think it's going to be clogged. There's going to be a lot of teams within a few games of each other, basically. And that, to me, will be like third to 7 maybe, where there's going to be separation by maybe a game or two. So I think that plays into this. And again, going back to Vegas, you ain't fooling me. Overreaction is a thing. People look at Eastern Conference, they're coming. They got a young squad. They're deep. Vegas knows. There's a reason they build those big buildings, and it ain't because people are hitting those bets. All right? So coming up next, League and Dukes Gaming announced a landmark agreement that will see Dukes Gaming launch an expansion team based in Mexico, okay? This will mark the first NBA 2K League in Latin America. So awesome stuff there. It's crunch time here on The Jump. Karl Anthony Towns had some strong comments on his time in Minnesota at Media Day. Let's take a listen.
What happened last week, it just added to the list. It's just the same thing every single time. It's something that's always leads to instability. And I joked about it the day before that I was like, man, it's been a real quiet offseason for Minnesota. It's very different. I've been through numerous front offices. I've been through numerous regimes. While being blessed to have so many great teammates to play with, I've also didn't have a chance to really build any true relationships with anybody because always instability, always change. I've been through a lot.
The T-Wolves will look to make the playoffs for just the second time in 18 seasons. So, Perk, where do Cat and the Wolves go from here?
You know what? Just a reset, right? Getting Cat in the front office, telling them the direction that they going in, hashing things out. We call it a coming to Jesus meeting. Look, camp at 240. I think, he has the right pieces in D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards. I'm looking for big things out of him. I think he'll be a first-time All-Star this year. That's how impactful I think he will. Impactful of season he will have with the Timberwolves. And look, they could possibly be in the play-in tournament. So I think Cat just need a reset, have a conversation, come to Jesus meeting. I think everything will be just fine.
Everything he said is true, but he's got to start with his own game, and that's play defense. Right there is where he can start turning things around.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Burke, you laugh, but it's true. Like, Tibbs got him to do it.
No, I'm not laughing. I'm just saying how serious Wendy was about it. On his mind to address that situation. That's all.
Yeah, and look, eventually there's going to be a new ownership group there. That transition is happening, so we'll see how that works itself out as well, certainly, for Cat and that group. So let's move on. Pacers guard Caris LeVert has a stress fracture in his back, but there's optimism. It could only be a minor setback. So, Wendy, how much would this hurt the Pacers if LeVert misses significant time?
Well, I've fortunately never had a stress fracture in my back, but I doubt there is such a thing as a minor stress fracture in your back. So I feel terrible about the injury misfortune that Caris has had, especially after he's had some momentum several times in his career. With a whole new coaching staff, the Pacers, I'm sure, really were hoping to get off to a rhythmic start. That is now spoiled. You just have to hope that it is a short-term injury.
And so I just want to see the young fella hoop for, an extended period of time, meaning, for at least 70 out of the 82 games. Because when he's out there on the floor, he's electrified, he's fun to watch, and we all know how talented he is. I just, hope that he could get his health under control. I know certain things are out of his control, and we go through things. I just want to see him on the floor healthy.
Yeah, amen to that for sure. Let's move on. John Morant told Taylor Rooks at Bleacher Report that he needs $1 million in order to dunk in the dunk contest because he doesn't trust the judges. Perk, should the NBA incentivize the dunk contest a little bit more?
Absolutely. Try to get some type of sponsorship or whatever, because look, guys are still out there putting their bodies on the line doing. Now, we haven't seen injuries and we're blessed not to have seen them in dunk contests, but some of the things, like a guy like, John Morant, he jumps and he lands awkwardly like a Russell Westbrook. So I'm with John. If I'm going to be in it and I'm going to be filling up seats and getting views, I need a big payday.
I don't quite understand the correlation. He wants the money because of the judging? It's like a compensation for if he doesn't win because of judging?
Yeah.
I think he should just say, I want the money because I'm a great dunker and that's what my value is. You want a night of entertainment from me, $1 million. And to that I say, go for it, Ja. I'm sure his peers in the league are like, well, what else can we start getting ancillary money for? I say go for it. But I would say, hey, listen, Ja, make it to All-Star Weekend, the full weekend. That would be the best thing for you and the Grizzlies.
Ooh.
All right. Listen, you ain't wrong about that. And I think he'll be there sooner rather than later. But let me add this. The winner, not just to compete, but the winner of the MLB Home Run Derby gets $1 million. So perhaps it is something the NBA should look at. Devin Booker will miss the start of Suns training camp due to NBA health and safety protocols. Over the weekend, the two-time All-Star confirmed that he tested positive for COVID-19. The Suns play the first of their 4 preseason games on Monday at Sacramento and open the regular season on October 20th at home against Denver. Wendy, let's start with you quickly here. How will a late arrival at camp impact Devin Booker and the Suns?
As long as he doesn't have lingering COVID symptoms, I think it's actually fine because he had a long, exhausting summer and they have rhythm and they're all going to have continuity. So I'm not worried about it as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, and I agree, Joy. Thing that Wendy said just in Perk voice.
That's the way to do it. Carry on, Wendy. That's all I'll say then, if that's the case. So, but yeah, I don't think there's any question.
Carry the hell on.
Yeah, exactly. Hell, I forgot the hell. My bad. Yeah, look, they played till just recently. As long as he's not dealing with any after effects, he should be fine.